Welcome back! It's time to start Season 3, and as I mentioned before in the last vlog, I'm gonna be going in the DVD order. Let's get in. So the first episode on the DVD order, and the first episode of Season 3, if you watched this back when it came out, was Helga Blabs It All. And in this episode, Helga goes to the dentist, and while she's there, she's put under, they give her laughing gas. Not only is she more relaxed and loose, but she basically becomes a blabbermouth. And in true Helga fashion, the thing that's on her mind is her love for Arnold. And not only does she go on and on and on and on about her love for Arnold, but she also gets up out of her chair, goes over into the lobby, picks up the phone, dials the number of Arnold's flat, and confesses her feelings to him. And right after she's done blabbing her feelings, the laughing gas wears off and she realizes, oh my gosh, I just called Arnold and blab my feelings to him. And she's like freaking out. Now, the one benefit is that Arnold wasn't there, so it wound up going to voicemail, but there's still this urgency. Like, she has to get to Arnold's house and destroy the message before Arnold gets it, or else he'll learn about her crush and the world's gonna fall apart. So Helga goes into the house and after several hilarious attempts manages to get inside the flat, but she isn't able to get to the message in time because the grandma picks up the voicemail, hears it, and tells Arnold, but thankfully she misheard it, and when she says it to Arnold, it sounds like complete gibberish, and Arnold cannot comprehend the message or who it's from. Helga's able to get to the voicemail, grab the tape with the message on it, because it's the 90s, and destroy it, and all's right in the world. I thought this one was really, really good. This was another really solid Helga episode. I kind of knew going in it was going to be great because Craig Bartlett's name popped up, and as I mentioned, when the creator writes an episode, it usually means it has a bit more of the finesse. And, you know, it felt like, it didn't just have that finesse, it felt a lot sharper, and I don't know if that's something that's going to be a trend with Season 3 as a whole, but in general, everything just felt really, really, really together. We're seeing Helga go to some hilarious extremes to keep her secret safe. And what I like about it is that a cartoon's a great way to explore this dilemma of not allowing your crush to find out, because in the grand scheme of things, crushes aren't a big deal. I mean, just check your news feed right now, or at least check your news feed around fall 2017, which is when I'm recording this. Yeah, there's a lot of bigger problems than your crush finding out you like them. But when you're a kid, when you're in high school or middle school or especially elementary school, your crush finding out that you have feelings for them, if that ever happens, it can feel like the end of the world. If we're watching this when we're young, we can identify with that embarrassment. And if we're watching this when we're older, we can look back and remember what it was like at that time where we didn't want to admit our crushes because fear and embarrassment. When you're young, crushes feel like everything, and but realistically, not the biggest thing in the world. And a cartoon's a great way to explore that, because cartoons, you can kind of do things that are not necessarily grounded and realistic, and it can help just exaggerate the paranoia and fear someone has about someone finding out their crush, which is exactly what they do here with all the hilarious extremes Helga goes to stop Arnold from finding her message. First off, we have the part where she beats up a scout so she can get into the flat without drawing attention. Another extreme, bribing the Ollie Jolly Man, which was a great gag. Like, I love how she just has the Ollie Jolly Man drive by and the kids are like, wait, the Ollie Jolly Man doesn't come here. Who cares? Free ice cream, let's go. Like, just all those extremes. But most notably, just the insane amount of creativity that's on display as far as Helga sneaking around Arnold's flat. There's some serious Metal Gear Helga going on. Arnold's flat isn't that big, so there's not a whole lot of places to hide. But what impressed me about this is that even though, again, it's just a 2-floor apartment, one main area downstairs, and then one itty-bitty hallway upstairs, they're able to find an insane amount of places for her to hide and just a bunch of different ways for her to sneak around it. The creativity on display is just impressive. From Helga somehow sneaking past Grandpa and into the alarm clock, to crawling around the vents, hiding in the dumbwaiter. I was just genuinely impressed by just how many different ways they're able to get Helga around the flat without being spotted. There's a lot of moments of just little to no dialogue, and it's just the score, which, as always, Jim Lang does a wonderful job at creating atmosphere, without the characters saying anything, without the characters really expressing much. It just perfectly captures the mood so many times, and I feel like this was just one of those moments. It also just had a great dream sequence. It was just great seeing the world through Helga's eyes. She kind of sees everything through the sort of rosy, happy, la-la vision, and then once she snaps out of it, everyone's laughing at her, and I just thought that's kind of what it's like being on Laughing Gas. It's like all's right, and then you snap out of it. Probably not to that extent, but I thought it was a good way to show it. And the resolution, I thought, was hilarious. From the payoff of Helga getting beat up to Grandma mishearing the message. The best probably was when Helga, after she gets the tape and she's crawling through the vents, and then she falls into Arnold's room through the rotating couch. Arnold's there with all his friends, and you can just feel the awkwardness in the air. Like, everyone's staring at Helga. Helga's just looking there like, and she's like slowly making her way out. And then the instant Helga leaves, the kids are just whatever, like business as usual. The animation is pretty good here. The animation's noticeably better, and I'm gonna soak it in because I found out that Season 3 is the last season of Hey Arnold that was done by hand-drawn animation cells. And if this is the quality we're getting of just the last time this is all drawn by hand before it's all done by computers, this is a good quality maintained. It looks really nice. Not perfect, but definitely better than some of the Season 2 stuff where it's like this was clearly made for Season 1. One thing I also noticed is that there's some new background kids. Amidst the kids in Arnold's room, there are some kids that we haven't seen before. And I just find that interesting because when Season 1 started off, characters like Curly and Stinky and Sid were more or less kind of relegated to the background for the most part. And it's interesting that now we're at a point where they are no longer background characters, and we kind of have to have more background characters. I'm curious if those kids are ever going to flesh it out. I doubt it, just considering their features aren't as well defined as the other characters. Like, even characters like Mr. Green or the Flower Shop Boy, like, even those, or the Ollie Jolly Man, like, you have all these distinct characters. These characters just feel like background filler characters. It's kind of taking a cue from The Simpsons, where The Simpsons kind of did that. Like, you had your cast of regular minor characters like Apu and Bumblebee Man, but then you also had all these miscellaneous background characters that were just sort of there to fill up the town. There are some little things that kind of sparked my interest. For one, at one point when Helga's in the dentist, we see 20 minutes later, and it's kind of weird. Hey Arnold's, as of this episode, has yet to do any transitions like that, so it's kind of interesting to see them do it. The second thing is just seeing Helga hold a cell phone. I mean, nowadays, it's pretty common, like, everyone has a cell phone. Heck, I have a cell phone right here with my otter case box. But back in the day, like, you know, if you wanted to use the phone, you had to use the home phone. So Helga logging around a giant phone, kind of a big deal. I mean, it's one of the perks that comes when your dad has a beeper. And actually, no, this isn't the first time we've seen Helga use the cell phone. She used it back in the episode where Arnold's reading through the diary. The technology in this episode, as crazy it is to think, is kind of dated. Like, back in the day, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter. Like, you wanted to contact someone, you either had to write them a letter, go to them in person, or call them on the phone. And, you know, most people didn't have the fancy schmancy phones, like, that was reserved for wealthy people. So, you know, you had to call them, the household. Sometimes the person you wanted to reach was there. Sometimes you get someone else and you'd have to ask, hey, is such and such home? This episode would probably play out differently now because we can just instantly message people. Helga did it now. You know, she would probably message him, and it would be 10 times harder for him to get onto his account or phone and delete the message. In fact, Arnold probably would have his cell phone on him and instantly look, check, and see. And there's something interesting to think. Like, is Hey Arnold going to kind of adapt to the modern world and include things like technology, or is it... Because Arnold takes place in what was present day at the time, which is the 90s, and the Jungle movie is going to take place a year later, so they're still going to have to write it like it's in the 90s. Like, they can't just have a year go by and all of a sudden there's cell phones and Facebook. That's something Rocko's Modern Life, the movie, is going to deal with, which I cannot wait for. It looks awesome! But yeah, like, it would be a lot harder for Helga to undo what she did with today's technology. Because there's a saying online, once you put something up, it can't go back down. And that's what I love about this show, is that I'm allergic to it. No, what I love about the show is that it, as crazy and absurd as some of the scenarios the kids can get into, it's very relatable, and it does take you back to what it's like to be a kid. It reminds you of a time when all these problems, like crushes, like when that just was your biggest problem. Man, I miss those days. Man, I miss the days when those were my biggest problems. So, great start to season 3. Can't wait to see what's next. Next up, I'm going to talk about Harold's the Butcher, but that's neither here nor now. So, as always, share your thoughts on this episode. Share your thoughts on themes. Just share your thoughts on anything. And I'll see you next time. I'm looking forward to what Hey Arnold brings next. Bye.